Chapter 11. For Joey, the week prior to the county fair crept by like a snail. He was eager to become a carny and leave Royal City behind forever. But it seemed to him that the time for his escape would come only after his mother had murdered him in his bed. There wasn't anyone around to help make the time pass more quickly. He avoided Mama, of course. Daddy was, as always, preoccupied with his law practice and his railroad models. Tommy Culp, Joey's best friend from school, was away on vacation with his family. Even Amy was hardly ever around these days. She worked at the dive every day but Sunday, and during the past week she had been out every night dating some guy named Buzz. Joey didn't know what Buzz's last name was, but maybe it was Saw. Joey had intended to go to the fairgrounds until Saturday, the last day, so that no one would figure out where he had gone until the carnival was far, far away in another state. But by the time Monday, June 30th, rolled around, he was so keyed up that he couldn't keep his resolve. He told his mother he was going to the library, but he got on his bicycle and pedaled 2 miles to the county fairgrounds. He still wasn't going to run away from home until Saturday, but Monday was the day that the carnival set up, and he figured he ought to learn how it was done if he ever was going to be a carny himself. For 2 hours he wandered around the midway, keeping out from underfoot, but getting a good look at everything. Fascinated by the speed with which the Ferris wheel and other rides took shape. A couple of carnies, big men with lots of muscles and lots of funny tattoos, kidded him, and he joked right back at them, and everyone he met seemed to be just swell. By the time he reached the site on which the funhouse was being erected, they were hoisting a giant clown's face to the top of the structure. One of the workers was a man in a Frankenstein mask that made Joey giggle. One of the others was an albino. He glanced at Joey, pinning him with colorless, rainwater eyes, as cold as winter's window. Those eyes were the first things in the carnival that Joey didn't like. They seemed to look straight through him, and he half remembered an old story about a woman whose eyes turned men to stone. He shivered, turned away from the albino, and walked toward the place in the middle of the midway, where they were putting up the octopus, one of his favorite rides. He had taken only a few steps when someone called to him, "Hey there!" He kept walking, even though he knew it was himself the man was calling to. "Hey, son, wait a minute!" Sighing, expecting to be thrown off the midway, Joey looked back and saw a man jumping down from the front platform of the funhouse. The stranger was tall and lean, maybe 10 years older than Joey's father. He had coal-black hair except at the temples, where there was pure white. His eyes were so blue that they reminded Joey of the gas flames on the kitchen stove at home. As the man approached, he said, "You aren't with the carnival, are you, son?" "No," Joey admitted glumly. "But I'm not getting in anyone's way. I'm really not. Someday, maybe I'd like to work in the carnival. I just want to see how things are done. If you'll let me stay and watch for a while." "Whoa, whoa, whoa," the stranger said. He stopped in front of the boy and stooped down. "You think I'm going to throw you out?" "Well, aren't you?" "My heavens, no." "Oh, I could tell you weren't just a gawker," the man said. "I can see that you are a young man with a genuine interest in the carnival way of life." "You could?" "Oh, yes, it just shines through," the stranger said. "Do you think I could be a carny someday?" Joey asked. "You? Oh, sure. You've got the stuff. You could be a carny or just about anything you wanted. That's why I called out to you, to see the right stuff shining in you. Sure could, even from up there on that platform." "Well, gee," Joey said, embarrassed. "Here," the stranger said, "let me give you these." He reached into a pocket and withdrew 2 rectangles of thin pink cardboard. "What are those?" "2 free passes to the fairgrounds." "You're kidding." "Do I look like I'm kidding?" "Why give them to me?" "I told you, you have the right stuff. As the carnies say, you're with it and for it. Whenever I see someone who's with it and for it, someone who's a carny at heart, I always give them a couple of free passes. Come any night and bring a friend. Maybe your brother. Or do you have a brother?" "No." "A sister?" "Yeah." "What's her name?" "Amy." What's your name? Joey. Joey what? Joey Allen Harper. My name's Conrad. I'll have to sign the back of the passes. He produced a ballpoint pen from another pocket and signed his two names with a flourish that Joey admired, and then he handed over the free passes. Thanks a lot. This is terrific. Enjoy yourself. Maybe someday you will be a carny, and you'll hand out free passes to people who are obviously with it and for it. How old do you have to be? Joey asked. To be a carny? Yeah, any age, just about. Could a kid join up if he was just 10? He could easily enough, if he was an orphan, or if his parents just didn't care about him at all. But if he had a family who gave a hoot, they'd come looking for him, and they'd take him back home. Wouldn't you carnival people, wouldn't you hide the kid? If the worst thing in the world for him was to be taken home, wouldn't you hide him when his folks came looking? Oh, couldn't do that, against the law. But if nobody cared about him, if nobody wanted him, the carnival would take him in. Always has, always will. What about you? I'll bet your folks care about you a lot. Not a lot. Sure, I'll bet they care a whole bunch. What about your mother? No. Oh, I'll bet she cares a lot. I'll bet she's really proud of a handsome, intelligent boy like you. Joey blushed. Do you get your good looks from your mother? Well, yeah, I look more like her than my dad. Those dark eyes, that dark hair. Yeah, like Mama's. You know, I knew someone once that looked quite a bit like you. Who? A very nice lady. I don't look like a lady. No, you don't. Of course. But you have her dark hair and her eyes. And there's something in the lines of your face. You know, it's just possible she could have had a boy about your age now. Yeah, quite possible. Wouldn't that be something? If you were the son of my long-lost friend. He leaned closer to Joey. The whites of his eyes were yellowish. There was a dandruff on his shoulder. A single breadcrumb was stuck in his mustache. His voice became even heartier than before when he said, "What's your mama's name?" Suddenly, Joey saw something in the stranger's eyes that he liked even less than what had seen in the albino's. He stared into those eyes. Two crystalline blue dots, and it seemed to him that the man's friendliness was an act, like on that TV show, The Rockford Files. The way Jim Rockford, the private detective, could be so charming and so friendly, but he was just putting it on in order to get some vital information out of the stranger without the stranger knowing that he was being pumped. All of a sudden, Joey felt that this guy was putting on the charm, just like Jim Rockford did. Joey felt as if he were being pumped for information, except that under his phony friendliness, Jim Rockford really was a nice guy. But underneath Conrad's smile, there wasn't a nice guy at all. Deep down in his blue eyes, there wasn't anything warm or friendly. There was just darkness. Joey? Huh? I asked you what your mother's name is. Leona, Joey lied without really understanding why he must not tell the truth. He sensed what telling the truth right now would be the worst thing that he could ever do in his whole life. Leona was Tommy Culp's mom. Conrad stared hard at him. Joey wanted to look away but couldn't. Leona? Conrad asked. Yeah? Well, maybe my friend changed her name. She never did like the one she was born with. Your mother still might be her. About how old would you say your mom is? 29? Joey said quickly, remembering that Tommy Culp's mother had recently had a 29th birthday party, at which, according to Tommy, all of the guests had gotten pissed. 29? You're sure? I know exactly because Mama's birthday is one day before my sister's, so we always get two parties close together every year. This is the last time my sister was 8, and my mama was 29. He was surprised that he could lie so easily and smoothly. Usually he was a lousy liar. He couldn't fool anyone. But now he was different. Now it was almost as if someone older and wiser were speaking through him. He didn't know why he was so positive that he had to lie to this man. Mama couldn't be the woman that Conrad was looking for. Mama wouldn't have ever been friends with a carny. She thought they were all dirty and crooked. Yet Joey lied to Conrad. and he had the feeling that someone else was guiding his tone, someone who was looking out for him, someone like God. Of course, that was a dumb thought. To please God, you always had to tell the truth. Why would God take control of you just to make you lie? The Carney's blue eyes softened, and the tension went out of his voice when Joey said his mother was 29. Well, I guess your mother couldn't be my old friend. The woman I'm thinking of would be around 45. They looked at each other for a moment. The boy just standing there, the man stooping down, and finally Joey said, "Well, thanks a lot for the free passes." Sure, the man said, standing up, obviously no longer the least bit interested in the boy. "Enjoy 'em, son." He turned and walked back to the fun house. Joey went across the midway to watch the workers erect the octopus. Later, the encounter with the blue-eyed Carney seemed almost like a dream. The 2 pink passes with the name Conrad Stryker neatly printed on the backs of them below the printed words, "This path authorized by," were the only things that kept the incident real and solid in Joey's memory. He remembered being afraid of the stranger and lying to him, but he couldn't recapture the gut feeling that had made him so certain that lies were necessary, and he felt somewhat ashamed of himself for not telling the truth. That night at 6:30, Buzz Clement picked up Amy at the Harper house. He was a ruggedly handsome guy with a lot of hair, muscles, a cocky attitude, and a carefully cultivated tough guy image. Mama had met him once, the second night he'd come for Amy, and she hadn't liked him one bit. In keeping with her statement that she no longer cared what happened to Amy, Mama hadn't said a word for or against Buzz, but Amy could see the loathing in her mother's eyes. Tonight, Mama stayed in the kitchen and didn't even bother to come to glare at Buzz. Richie and Liz were already in the back seat of Buzz's vintage GTO convertible. The roof was down, and as soon as Buzz and Amy got in, Richie said, "Hey, put up the top so we can pass the joint around all the way to the fairgrounds without anyone seeing us." "Good old Royal City, Ohio," Liz said, still frozen in the Middle Ages. "Would you believe there are some places in this country where you can smoke grass right out in the open without getting thrown in jail?" Buzz put up the top, but he said, "Hold the joint until after we've stopped for gas." Half a mile from the Harper house, they stopped at a Union 76 station. Buzz got out to check the oil, and Richie got out to dump the gas. As soon as Lizzie and Amy were alone in the car, Liz leaned forward from the back seat and said, "Buzz thinks you're the hottest thing he's ever seen." "Oh, sure." "No, he really does." "He tell you that?" "Yeah, we haven't done anything." "That's one of the reasons he thinks you're so hot. He's such a dreamboat that he's used to girls just falling on their backs for him. But you tease him along, you let him feel a little, and then stop him right on the brink. He's not used to that. It's different. He's got an idea of when you finally give in, you'll be absolutely wild. If I give in." "You'll give in. You still don't want to admit it, but you're just like me." "Maybe." "You've been dating him every night for a week, and each night you let him get a little further than the night before. You're coming out of your shell, an inch at a time." "Buzz told you exactly how far I've let him go?" "Yep." "Oh, geez. He's got such class." "Oh, hell. He wasn't tattling on you. It's not like he told a stranger I'm your best friend. And Buzz and I go way, way back. I used to screw around with him when we were still the best of buddies. Listen, kid, when we leave the carnival tonight, let's go back to my house. My folks are still away. You and Buzz can use their bedroom. Stop teasing the guy. Give him a break. Give yourself a break. You want the old salami just as much as I do." Buzz and Richie got back in the car, and Richie fired up a joint, while Buzz drove to the fairgrounds. They passed around the dope, and each of them took a couple of deep drags, holding the smoke in their lungs as long as they could. In the parking lot of the fairgrounds, they lit another joint and sat in the car until they had done that one too. By the time they reached the ticket booth, Amy was feeling warm and airy and a bit giggly. As she drifted onto the carnival lot into that roar of sound, a whirlpool of motion, she had the particular feeling that tonight was going to be one of the most important nights of her life. Tonight she would make decisions about herself. Tonight she would either accept the role in life that both Liz and Mama believed she was suited for, or she would make up her mind to be the good, responsible person that she had always wanted to be. She was standing on a thin line, and it was time to jump one way or the other. Time to make up her mind about herself. She didn't know how she knew that, but she did know it. The feeling was unshakable. At first it sobered her and made her a little bit afraid. But then Liz made a funny crack about a fat woman who was walking up the midway in front of them, and Amy laughed, and the grass had its effect, and the laugh turned into uncontrollable giggle, and then she was floating again. Small intermission. Part 3, The Funhouse. Chapter 12. Amy discovered that Liz was right about a little grass, making the thrill rides even more fun than usual. They rode the octopus, the tilt-a-whirl, the dive bomber, the whip, the loop-de-loop, the colossus, and others. The ramps seemed higher than those on thrill rides that Amy had ridden in the previous carnivals. The dips seemed deeper. The whipping action, the spinning, soaring, diving, twisting, turning, all seemed wilder and faster than ever before. Amy held on to Buzz and screamed with delight and with a quiver of genuine terror as well. Buzz pulled her close. He used her fear in the sudden lurchings of the rides as an excuse to cop a couple quick cheap feels. Like Liz, Amy was wearing shorts, a t-shirt, but no bra. Buzz couldn't resist touching her breasts and her long, bare, nicely tanned legs. Each time she got off a ride, Amy was disoriented for a moment and had to cling to Buzz. And he liked that. And she liked it too, because Buzz had such big, hard, muscular arms and shoulders. Only 40 minutes after they arrived at the fairgrounds, they slipped off the midway between a couple of sideshows to the back lot where rows of carnival trucks were parked. They went around behind the trucks to the deserted cul-de-sac at the end of the fairgrounds' ivy-covered fence. They stood in shadow-dappled summer evening sunlight and passed around a third joint that Liz took out of her purse. They sucked in the sweet smoke, held it down as long as they possibly could, then let it out with urgent gasps of pleasure. "This one's a little different," Richie said as he handed the rolled cigarette made its second round to their huddle. "This one what?" Amy asked. "This joint. Yeah? It's spiced up." "With what?" "Trust me." "Angel dust." "Trust me." "Hey, I'm not sure I like smoking something that I don't know what it is." "Trust me," Liz said. "I trust you about as far as I can throw you," Buzz said. "Doesn't matter. We've almost finished the joint anyway." Buzz was holding the stub. He hesitated and said, "Oh, hell, why not live dangerously?" He took one last drag on it. Richie started to kiss Liz on the neck, and Buzz kissed Amy, and without quite realizing how it happened, Amy found herself pinned against the side of one of the trucks, and Buzz was running his hands up and down her body, kissing her hard and pushing his tongue into her mouth, and then he tugged her t-shirt out of her shorts and got one hand under it and squeezed her bare breasts, thumbed her nipples, and she moaned softly, concerned that someone might walk around behind the trucks and see them, but unable to express her concern, responding even to Buzz's crude caresses. Suddenly, Liz said, "Enough, you guys. Save it for later. I'm sure as hell not going to lie down right here in broad daylight and take it in the dirt." "The dirt's the best place," Richie said. "Yeah, let's do it in the dirt. It's the natural thing." "Yeah, all the animals do it in the dirt." "Yeah, let's be natural. Just hang loose and be real natural." "Stifle yourselves," Liz said. "There's a lot more carnival to see. Come on, let's go." Amy tucked her t-shirt, and Buzz gave her one more very wet kiss. Back on the midway, Amy thought the ride seemed to be spinning faster than before. All the colors were more vivid, too. The dozens of different sources of music seemed louder than they had been 10 minutes ago, and each song possessed a subtleness of melody which she hadn't been previously aware of. "I'm not totally in control of myself," Amy thought worriedly and dizzily. "I'm not out of control yet, but I'm liable to wind up that way. Gotta be careful, sensible. Watch out for that dope. That damn spiced up dope. If I don't watch myself, I'm going to end up in a bedroom at Liz's house with Buzz on top of me, whether that's what I really want or not. And I don't think that's what I want. I don't want to be the kind of person Liz and Mama say I am. I don't. Do I? They roped the loop again, and Amy clung to Buzz. After spending Monday morning and part of the afternoon at the fairgrounds watching the carnies set up their equipment, Joey hadn't intended to return to the carnival until Saturday night when he would run away forever. But Monday evening he changed his mind. Actually, his mama changed it for him. He was sitting in the family room watching television, drinking Pepsi, when he accidentally knocked over his glass. The soda splashed on his chair and spilled all over the carpet. He got a bunch of paper towels from the kitchen and cleaned up the mess as best he could, and was sure that he hadn't permanently stained either the carpet or the chair's upholstery. In spite of the fact that the damage wasn't serious, Mama was furious when she walked in and saw him with handfuls of Pepsi-soaked paper towel. Although it was only 7:30, she was half drunk already. She grabbed him and shook him and told him he behaved like a little animal, and then she sent him to bed more than 2 hours early. He felt miserable. He couldn't even turn to Amy for sympathy because she was out somewhere on another date with Buzz. Joey didn't know where she and Buzz had gone, and even if he did, he couldn't run after her, whimpering about how Mama had shaken and scared him. In his room, Joey sprawled on the bed for a while, crying, utterly disconsolate, angered by the injustice of it all, and then he thought of the 2 pink passes that the carney had given him earlier in the day. 2 passes. He would use one to get into the fairgrounds on Saturday evening. Then he would try to join up with the carnies by telling them that he was an orphan and had nowhere else to go. But that left 1 pass. And if he didn't use it between now and Saturday, it would only go to waste. He sat up on the edge of the bed and thought about it for a few minutes. Then he decided that he could sneak off to the carnival, have a lot of fun, and sneak back into the house without his mama knowing that he'd been gone. He got up and pulled the drapes shut so that hardly any of the fading summer evening sunlight reached inside the room. He took a spare blanket and an extra pillow from his closet and used those to form a dummy under the covers. He switched on his dim nightlight, stepped back from the bed, and studied his handiwork critically. Even with the splinters of light showing at the edges of the drapes, he thought the dummy would pass Mama's inspection. Usually she didn't come to his room until 11 o'clock, at the very earliest. And if she waited that long tonight, well until after dark, then the room would be illuminated by only the nightlight. The trick would surely work, and she would be fooled by the dummy. The hard part was going to be getting out of the house without drawing her attention. He took a few dollar bills from his $32 kitty and tucked the bill money into a pocket of his jeans. He also pocketed one of the carnival passes and stuck the other one under the glass jar bank that stood on his desk. He carefully opened his bedroom door, looked both ways along the upstairs hall, stepped out of the room, closed the door behind him. He crept to the stairs and began the long, tense journey down towards the first floor. Amy, Liz, Buzz, and Richie stopped in front of a sideshow that advertised a magician called Marco the Magnificent. The come-on was the large poster that showed a screaming woman being decapitated by a guillotine, while a grinning magician stood with his hand on the executioner's level. I love magicians. I love anyone I can get my hands on, Liz said, giggling. My Uncle Arner used to be a stage magician, pushing his glasses up on his nose to take a closer look at Marco's lurid poster. Did he make stuff disappear and everything? Buzz asked. Liz said he was so bad that he made audiences disappear. Amy was giddy from the spiced-up pot that she had smoked, and Liz's little joke seemed hysterically funny. She laughed, and her laughter infected the others. No, now really, honestly, did your Uncle Arnold make his living that way? It wasn't just a hobby or something? No hobby. Uncle Arnold was the real thing. He called himself the Amazing Arnoldo. But I guess he didn't make much of a living at it. He got to hate it after a while. He's been selling insurance for the past 20 years. I think being a magician would be neat. Why'd your uncle hate it? Well, every successful magician has to have a trick that's all his own. A special illusion that makes him stand out in a crowd of other magicians. Uncle Arnaldo had his gimmick where he made 12 white doves appear one after the other out of thin air in bursts of flame. The audiences would applaud politely when the first dove appeared, and then they'd gasp when the second, the third ones popped up, and by the time half a dozen birds had been materialized, the audience was cheering. When the entire dozen had been brought out of their hiding places in my uncle's clothes, each presented a little puff of fire. You can imagine the ovation the audience gave him. I don't understand. Yeah, your uncle was so great, why'd he quit and start selling insurance? Sometimes, not often, but about once every 30 or 40 performances, one of the doves would catch fire and burn up alive, right there on stage. It bummed out the audience, and they booed Uncle Arnaldo. Liz laughed, and Amy laughed too, and Liz did an imitation of a burning dove trying to slap the flames off its wings, and Amy knew that it wasn't really funny, knew that it was a horrible thing to happen to the poor birds, and she knew she shouldn't laugh, but she couldn't help herself, because it seemed like the most hilarious story she had ever heard. It wasn't very funny to Uncle Arnold, Richie said between whoops of laughter. Like I said, it didn't happen often, but he never knew when it was going to happen, so there was always tension. The tension gave him an ulcer, and even when the birds didn't burn up, they shit in his suit pockets. They all laughed again with renewed vigor, holding on to each other. People passing them on the midway gave them strange looks, which only made them laugh even harder. Richie treated everyone to tickets for Marco's next show. The ground inside the magician's tent was covered with sawdust, and the air was musty at best. Brightly colored plastic flags and posters of Marco decorated the dimly lighted canvas-walled space. Amy, Liz, Buzz, and Richie joined 24 spectators who were crowded around a small raised stage at one end of the tent. A moment later, Marco appeared in a cloud of blue smoke, taking a bow as a tape-recorded fanfare filled the room. It was painfully obvious that he had merely stepped through a slit in the rear wall of the tent, using the smoke for cover. In fact, he hadn't even stepped onto the stage, he had stumbled. Liz glanced at Amy. They both giggled. Thank God he's a magician and not a tightrope walker, Richie whispered. Amy felt as if she were standing on balloons, balancing precariously, about to perform some splendid magic act of her own. What had Liz added to that joint? Marco's appearance was as pathetic as his entrance. He was a middle-aged man with bloodshot eyes. He was heavily made up to resemble the devil. His lips were red, his face was frost pale, and his eyes were outlined with thick black mascara, and his widow's peak was also accentuated with mascara. He wore a shabby tuxedo and a pair of white gloves that were marred by several large yellow stains. He shouldn't wear those gloves when he jerks off, Liz whispered. They all laughed. Gross. He looks gross enough to do it, Buzz whispered. Marco glanced nervously at them, unable to hear what they were saying. He smiled at them and doffed his top hat in a feeble attempt to win their silent attention. Whatever you do, for God's sake, don't let him shake hands with you. They all laughed again. A few of the other spectators were glancing at Amy, some just curious, some disapproving, but she didn't care what they thought. She was having too much fun. Marco decided to ignore him, and he picked up a deck of cards that was on the small table in the center of the stage. He shuffled the cards and wrapped them in a silk handkerchief, with only one edge of the deck exposed. He placed that bundle in a clear glass goblet, every moment performed with flourish. When he stepped back and pointed at the goblet, cards began to rise individually from the silk-swathed deck. First the ace of diamonds, then the ace of clubs, the ace of hearts, and finally, mistakenly, the jack of diamonds. Marco looked embarrassed, quickly swept the cards away, and went on to his next trick. Boy, does he stink, Buzz said softly. It's those gloves you smell, Liz said. Richie, is this guy really your Uncle Arnaldo? Amy asked. Marco blew up a balloon and nodded it. When he touched the burning cigarette to the balloon, the sphere popped noisily, and the live dove appeared in the heart of the explosion. It was a better illusionist than the card trick, but Amy still saw the bird dart out from beneath the magician's tuxedo jacket. Marco performed 2 more tricks that drew only half-hearted applause from the audience, and then Liz said, "Are you guys about ready to split?" "Not yet." "This is fucking boring." "The guillotine." "What guillotine?" "The one on the poster outside. He chops off some broad's head." "That's the only way he's ever going to get head from a woman," Liz said, giggling. Marco spoke for the first time, his voice surprisingly rich and commanding. "And now for those of you who are connoisseurs of the bizarre and macabre, the gruesome, the grotesque, I will show with what I fondly refer to as the impaler." "What about the guillotine?" Richie said to Buzz. "Asshole, that's just a come on." Marco rolled a large, upright box to the center of the stage. It was a foot or so shorter than a coffin, but otherwise it looked exactly like the centerpiece of a funeral. "I hear you mumbling out there. I hear you saying, 'The guillotine? The guillotine!' Unfortunately, that device belonged to my predecessor. Both it and he are being held by the police due to an unfortunate accident. The last lady who assisted him lost her head and caused a messy scene." The audience laughed uneasily. "What a cornball act," Liz said. "Jesus." But on the contrary, to Amy, Marco appeared to have undergone an eerie metamorphosis. He was not shabby and silly looking now, as he had been when he first stumbled onto the platform. His crude makeup no longer seemed like a joke. Second by second, he looked increasingly demonic, and there was a new, terrifying, evil gleam in his eyes. His nervous smile had become a knowing, wicked leer. When his eyes met Amy's, she felt as if she was staring at twin windows that offered a glimpse of hell, and she was cold all the way through to the marrow. "Don't be ridiculous," Amy told herself, shuddering. "Marco the Magnificent hasn't changed. It's only my perception of him that's been altered. I'm having a mild hallucination. I'm tripping, flying. It's that damn joint, the drugs. What spice did Liz add to that grass?" Marco held up a 2-foot-long pointed wooden stake. "Ladies and gentlemen, I promise you'll enjoy this illusion more than you would have enjoyed the guillotine. It's really much, much better," he grinned. And then there was something dark and unwholesome in that Cheshire cat expression. "I need a volunteer from the audience. A young woman." His malevolent eyes slowly swept the faces below him. He raised one hand and pointed ominously at each woman, one after the other. And for a breathtaking moment he seemed to stop at Amy. But then he moved his hand again and stopped even longer at Liz. But finally he chose an attractive redhead. "Oh no," the redhead told him. "I couldn't. Not me." "Of course you can. Come on, folks, let's give this charming, brave young lady a hand." The audience applauded on cue, and the woman reluctantly walked up the steps to the stage. Marco took hold of her arm as she reached the platform. "What's your name?" "Jenny." "You're not afraid, are you, Jenny?" "Yes," she said, blushing. Marco grinned. "Smart girl." He escorted her to the coffin. It was standing on end, tilted back slightly on large metal braces. Marco pulled open the lid, which was hinged at the left side. "Please step into the box, Jenny. I promise what you will feel absolutely no pain whatsoever." With the magician's help, the redhead stepped backwards into the box facing the audience. Her neck fit into a U-shaped cutout in the top of the box. Because the coffin was short, her head stuck out of it when Marco closed the lid. "Comfortable?" Marco asked. "No," the woman said nervously. "Good." He grinned at the audience and then secured the front of the box with a large padlock. A premonition of disaster, a feeling that she was in the presence of death, seized Amy in its invisible, icy hands. "Just the damn drugs," she told herself. "Just the damn drugs." Marco the Magnificent spoke to the audience. In the 15th century, Vlad V of Wallachia, known as Vlad the Impaler to his frightened subjects, tortured tens of thousands of male and female prisoners, mostly foreign invaders, Once the Turkish army turned back from a planned invasion when it encountered a field where thousands of men were propped on spikes that had been driven all the way through their bodies by Vlad's hand-picked death squads. Tiring of his name, Vlad selected a new one, that of his father, an equally nasty man known as Dracul, meaning the devil, added the letter A, and he became Dracula, son of the devil. And so, my friends, our legend's born. Cornball, Liz said again. But Amy was mesmerized by the strange, new, and dangerous creature that appeared, at least to her eyes, to have taken possession of Marco's body. The bottomless, all-knowing, evil eyes of the magician met Amy's eyes again and seemed to see all the way through her before they looked away. Marco displayed the 2-foot-long pointed wooden stake once more. Ladies and gentlemen, I present the Impaler. About fucking time, Liz said. Marco picked up a small but heavy mallet. If you will look at the front of the box, you will see that a small hole has been drilled through the lid. Amy saw the hole. A bright red heart had been painted around it. The hole lies directly over the volunteer's heart. He licked his lips, turned, and carefully inserted the stake into the hole. Do you feel the point of the stake, Jenny? She giggled nervously. Yes. Good. Remember, there will be no pain at all. Holding the stake in his left hand, he raised the mallet in his right. Absolute silent. For those of you who are squeamish, avert your eyes. She will feel no pain, but that does not mean there will be no blood. Huh? Hey, wait, Silence, Marco shouted, and he swung the mallet hard against the stake. No, Amy thought. With a sickening, wet, tearing sound, the stake sank deep into the woman's chest. Jenny screamed and blood gushed from her twisted mouth. The audience gasped. A couple of people cried out in horror. Jenny's head slumped to one side. Her tongue lolled. Her eyes stared sightlessly over the heads of the people in the tent. Death miraculously transformed the face of the volunteer. The red hair turned blonde. The eyes changed from green to blue. The face was no longer that of Jenny, the woman who had walked onto the stage from the audience. It was now Liz Duncan's face. Every plane, every hollow, every feature, every detail belonged to Liz. It wasn't just a trick of the light and shadow. It was Liz in that coffin. It was Liz who had been impaled. It was Liz who was dead, blood still oozing from between her ripe lips. Having trouble drawing her breath, Amy looked at the girl beside her and was amazed to see that her friend was still there. Liz was in the audience, yet somehow she was also on the stage in the box, dead. Confused, disoriented, Amy said, But it's you. It's you up there. Liz in the audience said, What? Liz in the coffin stared into eternity and drooled blood. Liz in the audience say, Amy, are you all right? Liz is going to die, Amy thought. Soon. This is some sort of premonition, a clairvoyance. Whatever you call it. Could that be true? Could it? Will Liz be killed soon? Tonight? Marco's look of shock and horror, which he had assumed the instant the blood began to spurt from the volunteer's mouth, now melted into a grin. The magician snapped his fingers, and the woman in the box suddenly came to life. The pain vanished from her face. She smiled dazzlingly. She no longer resembled Liz Duncan. She never did look like Liz, Amy thought. It was just me, the drugs, the hallucinations. It wasn't a premonition. Liz isn't going to die soon. God, I'm out of it. The audience sighed with relief as Marco pulled the stake out of the hole in the lid of the box. The magician had ceased to look sinister. He was the same shabby, pudgy, inept man who had stumbled through the canvas flap 10 or 15 minutes ago. The omniscient, evil personality no longer looked out through Marco's eyes. His resemblance to the devil was gone. Imagination, Amy told herself. Delusions, it meant nothing. Nothing at all. Liz isn't about to die. None of us is going to die. I've got to get a hold of myself. Marco helped Jenny out of the box and introduced her to the audience. She was his daughter. Another cheap trick, Amy said, disgusted. As she left Marco's tent, Amy sensed the disappointment in her 3 companions. It was almost as if they had hoped that the woman really would be pierced through the heart, or have her head chopped off by a guillotine. The spice that Liz had added to the last joint of grass was something extremely powerful, for already it was making them fidgety, restless. They required more and more bigger thrills to dissipate their newfound nervous energy. A decapitation and some spilled blood were apparently just the sort of thing that Buzz and Liz, if not Richie, needed to see in order to burn off the chemicals bubbling in their bloodstreams, and the sort of thing they needed to experience in order to mellow out again. No more dope tonight, Amy vowed. No more dope ever. I don't need drugs to be happy. Why do I use them? They went to a sideshow called Animal Oddities, and the bizarre creatures in that attraction gave Amy the willies. There was a goat with two heads, a bull with a third eye, triple cranium, a disgusting pig with eyes on either side of its snout, plus two more eyes higher in its head, greenish drool trickling over its cracked and leathery lips, two long extra legs coming out of its left side, and they finally came to a pen that contained a normal-looking lamb. And Amy reached out to pet it, but when it turned toward her, she saw that it had an extra nose and a bulging, sightless third eye on the side of its head, and she pulled her hand away. The nightmarish animals were a beer chaser to the whiskey-like effect of the spiced grass she had smoked. When she left Animal Oddities, she felt higher, more thoroughly detached from reality than when she had entered. They rode the rocket go-round. Amy sat in front of Buzz on the motorcycle-like seat in one of the two passengers, bullet-shaped cars, in the relative privacy of that rapidly spinning container. But he put his hands on her braless breast. The centrifuge force pushed her back against him, and she felt the heat and size of his erection as his crotch was jammed hard against her buttocks. I want you, he said, putting his mouth against her ear, making himself heard above the roar of the rocket go-round and the fierce whining of the wind. It felt good to be wanted so badly, to be needed as Buzz needed her, and Amy wondered if maybe it was a good thing to be like Liz. At least you always had someone around who needed you for something. At Bozo the Clown's booth, both Buzz and Richie managed to hit the bullseye and dunk the jeering clown in a huge tub of water. Buzz went about it dodgily, buying 3 baseballs, then 3 more, then 3 more, until at last he connected and sent Bozo into the tub. Richie, on the other hand, disdained that approach. He considered the situation with a mathematician's eye and sensibilities, threw 2 bad pitches, learned from each of them, then banged the bullseye on his 3rd try. Later, when their car stopped for a moment at the top of the Ferris wheel, with Diamond Bright midway spread out below them, Buzz kissed Amy, kissed her deeply, hungrily, his tongue probing her mouth. His hands were all over her. She knew that tonight had to be the turning point in their relationship. Tonight she would either have to drop him or give him what he wanted. She couldn't stall any longer. She had to decide who and what she was. However, she was so high, so loose, that she didn't want to think, couldn't think, about complex problems like that. She just wanted to float along and enjoy the lights and the sounds, the blur of the motion, constant action. After the Ferris wheel, they boarded the bumper cars and bashed each other mercilessly. Sparks cracked and flew from the exposed wire grid overhead. The air smelled of ozone. Each noisy, shattering collision sent a jolt of sensual pleasure through Amy. On one side of the bumper car pavilion, the carousel turned in a blur of white lights. On the other side, the tilt-a-whirl spun, rose, and fell. Kaleidoscopic music mixed with the roar of the crowd and the constant chatter of the pitchmen and the crashing of the bumper cars. Amy loved the carnival. As she pursued Richie's car and slammed it into it broadside as she was spun around by the impact, she thought that the carnival, with all of its lights and excitement, might be a little bit like Las Vegas, and she wondered if perhaps she would enjoy going to Nevada with Liz. From the bumper cars they went to the Freakorama, and Amy's dissertation was made even worse by what she saw in that place. The 3-eyed man whose skin was like the skin of an alligator, the fattest woman in the world sitting on a gigantic couch, dwarfing that piece of furniture, her body nothing more than a lump, her facial features lost in doughy fat, a man with a second pair of arms growing out of his stomach, and a man with 2 noses and lipless mouth. Liz, Buzz, and Richie thought Freakorama was the best thing on the Midway. They pointed and laughed at the creatures on exhibit, as if the people at whom they were laughing could neither see nor hear them. Amy didn't feel the least bit like laughing. Even though she was still very high on grass, she remembered Jerry Galloway's curse and Mama's certainty that the baby would be disformed, and such sights as those in the Freakorama struck too close to home to amuse her. Amy was embarrassed both for herself and for the pathetic freaks who posed for a living in the stalls. She wished there was some way she could help them, but of course she couldn't. So she listened to her friends making wisecracks, and she smiled dutifully, and she tried to hurry them along. Strangely, the most frightening exhibit in the Freakorama was the baby in the enormous jar. All of the other human oddities were alive, and of such size that they might potentially pose a threat, but the dead, harmless thing in the jar, no possible threat to anyone, was the most unsettling of all. Its large green eyes stared blindly out of its glass prison. Its twisted, flared nostrils seemed to be sniffing at Amy, Liz, Buzz, and Richie. Its black lips were parted, and its pale, speckled tongue was visible, and it looked as if it were snarling at them. Nobody else but them, as if it would close its mouth after they walked away. Creepy, Liz said. Jesus. It isn't real, Richie said. It wasn't ever alive. It's just too freaky. No human being could give birth to that. Maybe no human being did, Liz said. That's what the sign says, Buzz observed. Born in 1955 of normal parents. They all looked up at the sign on the wall behind the jar, and Liz says, "Hey, Amy, it's your mother's name was Ellen. Maybe he's your brother." Everyone laughed except Amy. She stared at the sign, at the 5 large letters that spelled her mother's name, and yet another tremor of premonition passed through her. She felt as if her presence at the carnival was not happenstance but destiny. She had the uncanny and distinctly unpleasant feeling that her 17 years of life could have led her nowhere else but here on this night of all nights. She was being maneuvered, constantly manipulated. If she reached overhead, she would feel the strings of a puppet master. It was possible that this thing in the bottle actually had been Mama's child. Was this the reason Mama had insisted that Amy have an abortion immediately? No, that's crazy, absurd, Amy thought desperately. She didn't like the idea that her life had been funneled exorbitantly into this tiny spot on the surface of the earth, at this minute among the trillions of minutes that compose the flow of history. That concept left her feeling helpless and adrift. It was just the drugs. She couldn't trust her perceptions because of the drugs. No more grass, ever again. I don't blame its mother for killing it, Liz said, peering at the thing in the jar. It's just a rubber model, Richie insisted. I'm going to get a closer look, Buzz said, slipping under the restraining rope. Buzz, don't, Amy said. Buzz approached the platform where the jar stood and leaned close to it. He reached out, put a hand to the glass, slowly ran his fingers down across the front of the jar, beyond which rested the face of the monster. Abruptly, he jerked his hand away. Son of a bitch! What's the matter? Buzz, come back here, please. Buzz returned, holding his hand up for them to see. There was blood in one of his fingers. What happened? Must have been a sharp seam on the jar, Buzz said. You better go to the first aid station. The cut might be infected. Nah, it's only a scratch. Funny though, I didn't see any sharp edges. Maybe you didn't cut it on the glass, Richie said. Maybe the thing in there bit you. It's dead. Its body it's dead. But maybe its spirit is still alive. A minute ago you told us the goddamn thing was just a rubber fake. I've been known to be wrong. How do you explain it biting through the jar? A psychic bite. A ghost bite. Don't give me the spooks, Liz said, hitting Richie on the shoulder. Ghost bite? That's stupid, Buzz said. The thing in the bottle watched them with its clouded emerald moon lamp eyes. The name Ellen seemed to burn brighter on the sign than any of the other words. Coincidence, Amy told herself. It had to be coincidence, because if it wasn't, if this really was Mama's child, if Amy had been brought to the carnival by some supernatural force, then the other premonitions might also be true. Liz actually might die here, And that was unthinkable, unacceptable. It was just coincidence. Ellen. Coincidence, damn it. Amy was relieved when they left Freakorama. They rode the Shazam and took another turn on the loop-de-loop. And then, suddenly, they were all starving. It was a drug-induced hunger, the insatiable appetite familiar to all serious pot smokers. They ate hot dogs, ice cream, candy apples. Eventually, they found themselves in front of the funhouse. The big man in a Frankenstein costume capered on a low platform, threatening the people who were boarding the cars to go into the funhouse. He waved his arms and snarled and jumped up and down in a terrible imitation of Boris Karloff. He's a real ham. They moved a few feet to the Barkers' platform, where a tall, distinguished-looking man was volleying the passing crowd. He looked down at them as he talked, and he had the bluest eyes Amy had ever seen. After a few seconds, she realized that the giant clown's face atop the building had been painted in the Barkers' image. Terrifying, terrifying, the Barker shouted. Goblins, ghosts, and ghouls, spiders larger than men, monsters from other worlds and from the darkest bowels of this one. Are all of the creatures that stalk the funhouse merely make-believe? Or is one of them real? See for yourself. Learn the truth at your own peril. Can you stand the test, the tension, the fear? Are you man enough? Ladies, are your men strong enough to comfort you inside? Or will you have to comfort them? Terrifying! I love to go through the funhouse when I'm high as a kite, Liz said. When you're really, truly wrecked, it's a gas. All those dumb plastic monsters jumping out at you. So let's go, Richie said. No. I've got to save it until we're really high. I'm really high now, Amy said. Me too. Oh well, we'll get more wasted than this. It's nothing. If I get more wasted than this, Richie said, I'll have to be institutionalized. Make it a cell for two, Buzz said. That's the idea. You've got to be really wrecked to fully appreciate the funhouse. Not me, Amy reminded herself. No more dope tonight. No more dope ever. They bought tickets for the ride called the Slithering Snake. The man at the controls was a dwarf, and while Liz waited for the ride to start, she teased the little man, made jokes about his height. He glared at Liz, and Amy wished her friend would shut up. When the slithering snake finally began to move, the dwarf got his revenge. He gave it much more speed than usual, and the chain of the cars flashed around the looping, rising, falling track so fast that Amy was terrified it was going to fly off the rails. What should have been a thrill ride became a knuckle-whitening, stomach-clenching ordeal, a sweat-popping torture that seemed like it would never end. Incredibly, even under those conditions, when the automatic canvas cover closed over the fast-moving train, Buzz took advantage of the darkness to take advantage of Amy. His hands were all over her. This whole night is like the slithering snake, Amy thought. It's out of control. After they rode the octopus again, after they gleefully bashed each other around in the bumper cars once more, they returned to the cul-de-sac behind the carnival trucks at the perimeter of the fairgrounds, and Liz stoked up another of her specially spiced joints. Darkness had come to the fairgrounds, and they weren't able to see each other clearly as they passed the reefer around. They made jokes about some stranger stepping out of the darkness and taking a tug without anyone being the wiser, and they kidded each other about seeing freaks hiding under the trucks around them. Amy tried to fake it when the joint came to her. She took a drag on it, but she didn't inhale. She held the smoke in her mouth for a moment and then blew it out. Even in the darkness, with only the glowing tip of the cigarette and the sound of withdrawal to judge by, Liz realized that Amy hadn't really taken a good pull on the weed. Don't hold back on us, kid. Don't be a party pooper. I don't know what you mean. Like hell you don't. Take another hit on that joint. When I'm wasted, I like to take a lot of company in the same condition. Rather than irritate Liz, Amy took another drag on the joint and sucked the smoke deep this time. She hated herself for her lack of willpower. But I don't want to lose Liz, she thought. I need Liz. Who else do I have? When they walked back onto the midway, they nearly collided with an albino. His thin, cottony white hair streamed behind him in the warm June breeze. He turned transparent eyes on them. eyes like cold smoke. And he said, "Free tickets to Madame Zena's. Free tickets to get your fortunes told. One for each lady, compliment of the carnival management. Tell all your friends that big America is for friendly carnival." Surprised, Amy and Liz accepted the tickets from the warm, bright hand that offered them. The albino vanished in the crowd. And so we stop at chapter 13.